Now, the Chancellor is set to announce the biggest shake-up of pensions for decades. Rachel Reeves hopes to unlock billions of pounds worth of investment in businesses and infrastructure by creating so-called pensions mega funds. Delighted to say that the Pensions Minister, Emma Reynolds, joins me now to discuss all this. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So we're building up to the announcement tonight at the Mansion House speech, and you're out to talk specifically about these pensions changes. Well, what's the headline for us?
So we're setting forward a very ambitious set of reforms this evening to create pension mega funds, which essentially would be bigger, fewer pension funds in the UK to invest in big infrastructure projects and high-growth companies. We see something similar in Canada and Australia, where they have arguably the best pension systems. And in Australia, for example, they invest 3 times more in infrastructure and 10 times more in private equity. And we believe that these reforms could unlock £80 billion worth of additional investment in companies throughout a certain period.
So let's expand that a little bit. You specifically in the press release, you say the reforms could unlock £80 billion worth of investment. The total assets under management, the total amount of money available to be invested, won't actually change, though, or will it? Am I missing something there?
Well, actually, the funds themselves are growing over time because, obviously, the likes of you and me are putting in our own money into our own pension contributions. So we estimate by 2030, defined contribution schemes and local government pension schemes will total around £1.3 trillion worth of investment. And that's what we're talking about reforming this evening.
No, I get that, but where does the £80 billion
We've looked at the best performing LGPS funds, so that's local government pension schemes, and how much they invest in private capital, private equity, businesses that are in high growth sectors and infrastructure. And we've taken what they do and we've extrapolated that out to the whole of the local government pension scheme, which is about £400 billion currently. Mm-hmm. And we've also looked at a similar high success rate in defined contribution. So that's how we've got to this 80 billion figure.
And I guess I just come back to the sort of thinking on this. So I understand the change to drive efficiencies, economies of scale, trying to emulate the Canadian and Australian successes as well. But the total assets under management, the total amount of money being invested doesn't change. Well, it's an allocation that you're hoping changes?
We're talking tonight about how they allocate their funding. But over time, these pension funds are growing anyway. But what I will say is that, obviously, the ultimate objective of all this is not just investment in the UK and UK PLC and helping businesses to scale and grow and remain in the UK, but it's also to ensure that our pension savers, which many of the people watching will be in that category, are getting better returns on the money that they're putting, particularly into DC pension pots, so that over time, when they retire, they will get a better retirement income.
And how are you going to deliver better returns?
By having bigger pension schemes that are able to invest in a more diverse range of assets, which include things like private equity, which are higher risk, but over time give a higher return, and infrastructure. So we want our pension funds to be bigger so they're able to make those investments. And
are you prescribing that the pension fund managers have to invest more in private equity? I mean,
no, we're not.
You're not doing that?
No, we think with scale that they will be able to have either in-house expertise or buy in that expertise to be able to invest in that broader range of assets. And that's what we see in other countries like Canada and Australia, where they have these big mega funds. Mm-hmm. They're able to invest more. So, for example, it's more likely today that if you were a Canadian teacher or, for example, an Australian professor, that you're invested in British infrastructure or British high-growth companies than a British saver is. And we just think that's wrong.
I guess the only risk with all of this, past performance is no guarantee of future performance.
Indeed.
Private equity, for example, has had a great couple of decades. In part, there's a lot of leverage in private equity, a lot of borrowing, because interest rates were so low. I mean, there's a lot of factors at play. I just wonder whether it's a sort of classic moment in time where the government tries to push people to invest more in private equity, and the next decade won't be so good. I mean, I guess the key question is, can you guarantee that this will be higher returns for pension savers?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and make investment decisions. I'm not an investment manager, I'm a politician. So what we're doing is creating the conditions for bigger pension schemes They, therefore, will be able to make the right decisions about a more diverse portfolio. As I've said, this has proved very successful elsewhere. And we've got the third largest assets under management in the entire world after the US and Canada, about £3 trillion in our pension schemes. There are lots of different types of pension schemes, unfortunately, a very complex landscape. But we want to be the best in class also in terms of investment and return for savers. But I'm not going to make the investment decisions. That's not my job.
More broadly, with the speech tonight, how important is it for the Chancellor to sort of reset the vibe between government and business? The head of the CBI, Ray Newton-Smith, was expressing a lot of disquiet, quote, a lot of disquiet in the business community on whether this government is actually focused on a growth mission. Whatever the fundamentals of the budget, is it fair to say that the political messaging hasn't gone down well as you expected with business?
At the budget, we did have to make some difficult decisions, but over half of all businesses won't see an increase in their national insurance contributions because of doubling the employment allowance. So the very small businesses won't see any increase, and some will be taken out of paying national insurance overall. But it wasn't just at the budget that we set out growth plans. We're absolutely intent on driving growth across the economy. It's our number one mission in government. We've set out plans, for example, we've created a national wealth fund which will over time catalyse investment of around £70 billion. Within 3 days of taking office, we set out very ambitious planning reforms which businesses have been crying out for years. And we've also set out plans for Skills England, long-term plans for infrastructure. So I would say to Rain and others in the business community, we are absolutely intent on growth. Please work in partnership with us to deliver the growth that the country needs.
And is that an important message to reiterate tonight? I guess my point is, do you accept that some of the messaging has failed? But some of the comments, again, from Ray Newton-Smith, chief executives look at some of the measures in the budget and say this is going to make it harder to make decisions to invest in the UK. So was there at least a failure on the messaging?
Well, I think we were very clear that we needed a budget to wipe the slate clean, to restore economic stability, to fix the foundations. We had to do that, so we did have to take some difficult decisions about tax. And obviously the national insurance contributions for employers was one of those decisions. But we have to rebuild Britain, we have to rebuild our public services. And companies across the country rely on having a well-educated and healthy workforce. And with waiting lists of 7.5 million, we haven't had that previously. So we have inherited a fiscal mess, but also crumbling public services, and we've had to deal with that. And we've chosen investment and growth and progress, not decline, like you would have seen under the previous government.
And just finally, I wanted to ask for the government's perspective on Rachel Venables' report earlier about abuse and sexual abuse in the paramedic service. It's not the first report from Rachel and her team on this. It is the first extension of the reporting since you came to government. It's a topic that got on the Prime Minister's agenda at one of his first PMQs. How focused is the government on trying to root out these issues and to address it?
Any abuse we have zero tolerance of. We've got to listen to the victims. NHS England has made clear that they're going to look into these allegations. We will not tolerate sexual abuse or abuse of any kind. And so this has to be rooted out, and we've got to listen to victims.
Emma Reynolds, as always, thanks so much.
Thank
Good to
you.
see you.